I'm Brian Sterling, and welcome to this week's companion cast for our special series, Spirit of America. Joining us this week, we're featuring the work of News 8 reporter Nicole Tam. Nicole joins us now in the Wood TV Plus studios. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, excited to be the first story in this series. It's going to be very special and excited to be here.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about, let's back up for a second and talk a little bit about Spirit of America. This is a series that we're doing. Obviously, this is America's 250th birthday, and to celebrate and to acknowledge some of the stories as it's been described to us that are just around the corner, we wanted to feature Americans in all sorts of, sizes and places around West Michigan who are maybe not being recognized or deserving of some attention and celebrating the spirit of America. So that's the thrust of what the series is all about. This is a little bit more of an in-depth conversation about the story that you pursued this week. So tell us a little bit about how you approached, this subject matter and what you were thinking as you went in trying to think of a story that you were going to work on.
Yeah, and I love that you give that description because I feel like America, we live in it, and patriotism or representing America is in all different sizes and shapes like you're mentioning, and it doesn't just necessarily mean displaying a flag or going to a patriot parade or something like that. It's our actions and behaviors as well. So when I was trying to brainstorm ideas, I had a few, and this one worked out, I think, in its own way, really represents that spirit. So I went to Otsego Public Schools this week and last week and talking with students and teachers because they have an exhibit starting in February about Anne Frank. So we know Anne Frank is with the Holocaust and all the events of World War II. And you can see in this video here just some of the moments there. So what's happening is that they have a 30-slide display. This is at Otsego High School, where these students you see right there, they're training to become tour guides to talk about all of these slides. So they have 2 days to learn all about Anne Frank and the history of the Holocaust and being able to present it and have a conversation with other peers within the school district and in their school. Just a very interesting way to learn history and to start conversations that's a little different than just a teacher sharing a curriculum but still learning history that we as Americans learn throughout our time in school and as adults.
It's such an important story. I know that the Diary of Anne Frank has been required reading in schools for many, many years. It's nice to see that that tradition is continuing on. Did the school district talk a little bit about why they wanted to illuminate the story of Anne Frank?
Yeah, so this project, that exhibit you just saw, actually came from the University of South Carolina.
Oh, really?
It's a traveling exhibit. It's been in 80 countries. There's 20 active exhibits right now here in the U.S., and Otsego and Allegan County is just one of those. But what's really unique is the person who's in charge of it from the University of South Carolina is actually from Gobles. So he's a West Michigan native who's able to work on this, and he tells me just how cool it is to be able to teach students of this age the importance of the Holocaust and the lessons that we're learning from it, including this diary that we used to have to read in school, but now being taught in a way like this, where it's peer-to-peer, through exhibits, through just interactions to talk about history, instead of just, the more traditional classroom setting as we've been talking about.
Yeah. And just looking at the video, this kind of looks museum quality level as far as the exhibit goes. They didn't shortchange the kids as far as that experience of being able to kind of really delve into this history. What grade are we talking about here, Nicole?
Yeah, great question, because the complexity of the history, I think you can't be in first grade and fully comprehend what's going on. So they did set this exhibit to be for 6 to 12 graders. So 6 to 12 graders within Otsego Public Schools will be visiting this specific museum exhibit by these 20 tour guides. So today was training. And those students were just learning how to present the exhibit. And it's okay. I think one of the big questions is it's okay to not know, because 2 days of training for months and years of history, that's a lot to ask for of a student. There's PhDs and university students who studied this for years. So the person from Gobles who's running this from the University of South Carolina acknowledged it's okay for these students to not know everything, but the idea is to engage in those conversations, be curious about it, and have those comments and interactions with one another between teachers, people in the public, just a good learning experience for them.
How cool. And you were able to talk, obviously, with some of the instructors there and the kids. What did they have to say about this?
It was really cool because we were on day 2 of training. They had 1 day of training and they're able to kind of get their thoughts together. But understandably, it's a lot of history, a lot to present, a lot to learn. They were nervous. They were nervous going into it, especially they were just presenting to their fellow students, but they're going to have to talk to the public and parents and teachers. I'm sure for middle and high school students, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but still so impressed just to see their effort and how much they learn in such a short amount of time in very important history in our time.
Do you want to set up the first soundbite that we have here? Who are we talking to?
Yeah, so besides the person running this, I talked to a teacher, middle school English teacher, who was part of this effort with Otsego Middle School, and just her perspective of why it's so important for students to learn about this exhibit and the lessons with it.
For them to be able to kind of share their perspective and like what's most interesting to them about that time period in history, what they were most passionate to learn about these last couple of days, and then what curiosities they still have is really empowering, and it's a really great opportunity for them to kind of lean into those leadership skills here at Otsego.
Yeah, they're really utilizing a bunch of skill sets here. It's history, it's learning to speak publicly and being able to absorb that information and then translate it onto the kids. What an immersive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the leadership skills, feeling public speaking. We do it every day, so sometimes we forget. But for students and people who just interact, sometimes speaking to a crowd can be nerve-wracking. So besides learning the important facts and learning about history, they're also building these skills such as public speaking, the confidence to do it. Just heartwarming to see the growth even just over the 2 days. And yeah, there are 20 peers selected for this program. They're going to give these presentations throughout February. But what's unique is actually the entire Allegan County schools will be participating in this. So it's not just Otsego. For the next 3 months, every single school in Allegan County will get this exhibit, and they will have 20 peers from each of those schools presented. So by the end of the 3 months, hundreds of kids would have seen this exhibit, and it's just their effort to try and get the curriculum and knowledge to make sure that people, no matter how old or young you are aware of what's going on.
You know, Anne Frank came up in the news as of recent developments in Minneapolis and in Minnesota. And I don't know if you saw the account, but Governor Tim Walz there drew a comparison to what is happening in Minnesota with the ICE enforcement and children having to hide and the lessons learned from the story of Anne Frank. Since he made some of those comments, there has been pushback.
Yes.
The National Holocaust Museum would kind of push back on some of those statements because, and rightfully so, they're a little protective of the Anne Frank story and her place in history, especially among the Jewish people, and didn't want that story necessarily co-opted for what may or may not be happening in Minnesota. With politics aside, talk a little bit, though, about the relevance of Anne Frank's story and how it does apply to our day-to-day lives here.
Yeah, and they talk about this too as students, because even though I asked them, this happened decades ago before you were even born, what compelled you to want to learn about this and volunteer to be a peer guide? And a lot of them told me it's the idea of being involved and learning from our past and learning from the history of it to be able to apply to what's happening to us today. And I like how you mentioned politics aside, because a lot of this is just more of learning and understanding what has occurred, no matter how you feel about it. When the instructor gave some factual explanations throughout the slides, you can see in people's faces, it's disturbing. The events of the Holocaust, I think no one can doubt it was disturbing, and it was heartbreaking to hear some of the stories, like what happened to Anne Frank's family, and to see the emotions from people today who weren't there decades ago, learn about it for the first time or learn more about it. I think it's just good tools to have as citizens to understand our past so that when we become, or when these kids become adults, they can kind of reflect on what they learned throughout school and be able to apply what they learned and the knowledge they have into everyday life to whatever it is that's going on in our world.
That's a great point. If they're absorbing a world history to be able to apply it to their own lives here in America, and that is the American story in a nutshell. You had a chance to talk to one of these newly minted tour guides as well. How did that go?
Yes, it was great. They're just so curious and so knowledgeable. It's not just high school students who are guides. There's also 8th graders who were chosen for this. And I'm just so impressed with how much they can learn and absorb and be able to retell in such a short amount of time. The person you're about to hear from, she's a junior, so she's in 11th grade, a little more of the older group of people being a tour guide, but this is what she had to say about the experience and being one of the 20 tour guides in Otsego Public Schools.
I try to get personal when I'm talking about it and with the other people and kind of relate to it. Like, we may not have been in this situation, but we can picture ourselves in it and how it makes us feel.
So that was Chloe Carpenter, and I actually asked her, that was her response to the question of, what do you do? I saw your face during some of the explanations. How do you hold back emotion sometimes, but still be able to express it? And that's kind of her response to it. Try to be relatable, but still not be so overwhelmed with personal emotions. And again, just considering an 11th grade student or 8th grade student, that's a lot to put on someone emotionally. But again, as we talked about, I think part of being American is these history lessons we take in school, and this is just another way to have hands-on learning and engagement with something beyond just a page in our history book.
Right. She says we may not have been part of this situation, but we can picture ourselves in it, and what a powerful lesson that is. How long does this exhibit run?
It's all month, actually.
Okay.
So I was learning about it, and it's going to travel. So in Otsego, they're going to go through all the schools and grade levels that are appropriate and have this. So it's going to be a while. But again, as I mentioned, it's going to travel through around all the schools in the county for 3 months. So eventually, I'm sure if you really want to see it, you are able to go see it, because the community is welcome to go visit as well, to whoever's interested to do it.
Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah.
That's great. Nicole Tam with her this week's installment of Spirit of America. These installments will run all the way up to the 4th of July as America celebrates its 250th birthday. So we'll be looking at many more stories here in West Michigan about the way people are celebrating the birth of this country and how they're honoring the American story themselves. Thanks for joining us. Look for Nicole's story over on Wood TV and woodtv.com, and we'll see you next week.